You can't replace meat with vegetables. They're two totally different things.
True Texan.
It's just the truth. That's a science. It's a science.
Truth, science, everything is bigger in Texas. A land of opportunity, the Lone Star State has called to the adventurous and hardworking for generations.
I said, I want to see something new every day, and I want to realize something new and find something to apply to good stuff, something of significance, stuff that's important.
We came up with the idea for this company, and we needed to find a way to get back to Texas.
Texans are willing to risk and invest in stuff.
It's wildcatting, really.
Silicon Valley, lots of resources to help you build an app of whatever type. But when it came to building something big and physical, not so much. So we needed to go somewhere that could help us build something big and physical.
I grew up on a ranch in South Texas. My family actually homesteaded it in 1846. They were talking about how they had homesteaded on this beautiful flowing creek. You know, the grass was as tall as the horses. It was a lot more lush than what I have today.
Welcome to our little farm here in Houston, Texas. We actually built the greenhouse right after Hurricane Harvey. We started investigating different types of hydroponics.
Hydroponics is actually like a space-age technology. My name is Rahul Vijayan, and I'm the CEO and founder of Farm to Tray. I started that nonprofit this year with the plans to accelerate this hydroponic adoption across schools in the Houston area and nationwide.
How old are you?
I'm 15 years old.
Despite we're only like just over a decade old, we're actually truly one of the old breweries in Texas. We just knew we wanted to make good beer. Seeing it over the last 12 years morph into a restaurant, a farm, an inn, an event hall, we didn't see any of that coming.
From fifth-generation ranchers capturing carbon to cutting-edge innovators growing food in outer space, Texans are masters at surviving and thriving, rooted in tradition with their eye on the future, which is important because their biggest industries, agriculture and energy, are changing with the changing climate.
This climate change battle is something that it's massive. It's the largest challenge that humanity's ever faced.
Texas growing with the way it is, population-wise, and also getting only like 40 inches of rain on average per year. Water sustainability is, I think, going to be a huge long-term challenge for this region.
Not a lot of things can grow in Texas based on water and nutrients.
Water is precious in Texas. You graze the ground down, the water just runs off.
Hydroponic farming literally means to work with water. We're growing plants not in soil. Soil-borne has a lot of its own issues, but mostly it uses a whole lot of water. It also requires a whole lot of land.
Where I live, it's a degraded landscape. That's actually the beginning of my journey into regenerative agriculture, was wanting to rebuild the landscape where I grew up.
Travis traded traditional ranching for a more holistic approach to managing land, with planned grazing and smart carbon capture tracking through Pasture Map, a software developed for ranchers.
The bison were here once, and so we have to replicate what they did for the land with domestic livestock. Set stocking, that's the traditional way of approaching ranch management. Dumping 500 cows out in a pasture and just letting them stay there all year long.
Regenerative land management, especially with cattle, it's basically a rancher letting cattle graze for a very short period of time. And then they move off for a long resting period, so the vegetation can restore.
Our goal is to always be improving the land. We think that properly managing the livestock is the best way for us to improve the biodiversity and the health of the whole ecosystem.
Few people realize that there's more carbon in the first 3 feet of soil than all the atmospheric carbon and all the biomass combined. There's an enormous amount of land available for carbon storage. 40% of the United States is being used for livestock management.
We want that 40% of the U.S. land mass that is devoted to agriculture to be working regeneratively.
People that become vegans and vegetarians because they think, well, I can't eat animals because of the way that they're raised. Well, what if we raise them in a way that actually heals the planet? All of a sudden, we have a win-win for everybody.
Innovation to me is a very elegant solution to difficult problems.
We're in Houston, it's considered a food desert city, and most of our product that comes to Texas have to travel thousands of miles away.
With hydroponics, and in particular with sustainable city farming, hyperlocal city farming, it solves so many problems.
The food served in our schools is quite poor in terms of nutrition. I think with hydroponics, we can actually change the lives of so many students just one meal at a time.
When you cut a plant at the farm level and then you transport it, you lose about 10% of the nutrition every day that it travels. But since it's still living in our system here, you lose zero nutrition.
We want to make sure that the community has year-round access to food. And not only just food, it's high nutrition.
We're trying to use hydroponics to use a small footprint, grow on top of the soil on tables or even in vertical towers. And that way you need a lot less land in order to produce food. We use so little water, on average 90%. If you do rainwater capture, it's even less than that, maybe 95% less water than regular land farming.
Everyone is talking about water. And since about 95% of beer is water, you better believe the folks at Jester King Brewery are looking at ways to save.
Our ratio is like 2 barrels of water going into every 1 barrel of beer, which the industry average, last I looked, was like 7-to-1. Instead of pulling from the aquifer to irrigate our crops, we can just treat our own wastewater and then land apply it. We are supporting local agriculture, and we work with Texas grain, Texas farmers as far as fruits and vegetables, even Texas farmers as far as hops. We've harvested yeast straight from the land and from the air. If we had no understanding of science, we would think it was truly like magic. Every single batch is a product of just one place and one time, never to be recreated again.
I'm having a moment with this one. I've never had anything like this. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. What we aspire here to do is make beer that's going to be very unique to our land, unique to the season that we're making it, and then unique to the people who are brewing here. It's something that is going to be authentically a true like Texas hill country beer. Our plan over time is to slowly restore native prairie lands, the land that we're on, which is a 165-acre ranch. We do agriculture on it, but it's 95% green space, and we intend to keep it that way.
As Austin continues to grow, there's going to be very little chances to exist in nature. It'll all end up being developed.
So preserving a green space was number one. And then number two, I would say, is going solar powered. We were able to qualify for a grant to do solar power.
With plenty of sunshine and over 4 gigawatts of solar capacity set to be installed by 2027, Texas is leading the nation in expanding solar generation. But how do we harness all that power? The crew at Renewable is on the job.
Renewable energy is inherently intermittent. We need electricity all the time. Energy storage solves that problem.
I got a call from a friend. He said, hey, I got this great idea. We should take inactive oil and gas wells and convert them to energy storage devices. Wells, on average, in the United States are a mile deep. So we have a lot of drop. This is an important characteristic of energy storage.
At the end of the day, I would sum up Artemis Prime as a fancy regenerative winch.
When that weight's at the top of the well, it's got a bunch of potential energy. As the weight descends, it's making power or pushing power to the grid, and it's pulling this winch made up of a motor generator. And when the weight gets to the bottom of the well, we pull power from the grid and reel it up. It's like a big battery.
I think that it's the best solution to the energy storage that I've seen. Plus, it also uses the secondary aspect of being able to use wells that should be sealed up and the methane removed.
There are inactive wells all around. I mean, it's home, pasture, inactive well. That's an environmental blight that ought to be cleaned up. The long-term strategy is that by 2050, there's hundreds of thousands of wells that have been converted. We would love to just go after the whole thing. Every inactive well, everywhere, all the time.
All things yield to persistence. Don't tell me what can't be done. Tell me 5 ways it can be done. Even if some things are not feasible today.
We're not going to be able to grow everything, but boy, if we can nurture 1,000 farmers and now that every city can support itself, that's our big dream.
I've been lucky enough to steward this land for the amount of time I'm here. If someone gave you the tools, you would do the same. I have lots of friends in the cattle industry, and every one of them, if you ask, they do it because they love the land.
Sustainability to us means the opportunity to take something that was, by all views, trash and or an environmental hazard, and then turn it into something that's actually net good for the environment.
Sustainability means putting back into the earth more than what we're taking from it. For me, it starts with the kids.
What's inspiring me is to push for a more sustainable future that'll lead to future generations having more resources.
I have 3 boys. I take a lot of pride in being a dad and trying to raise them right. If I can instill anything in them, it's not necessarily to carry on the business as it is just to learn to take care of the land. And if you take care of the land and the planet, for everybody, it's going to take care of us in return.
I think a legacy is important. You want the good work we started to continue on.
Eventually, problems are solved. If they're important enough, you'll find other ways to do it.